So obviously we're talking about the eligibility issues that have come about with at least a few of the players in our area in Onslow County. Thankfully they're now able to play, but it's kind of a strange situation because you guys, student athlete, the student comes first. You want to make sure these young people are doing what they need to do in school before they go play sports.
Correct.
Here's a situation where we have some individuals who are seemingly going above and beyond in their schoolwork, and somehow in the process, things got off kilter a little bit. When did you first become aware of these types of situations?
Well, we've known about situations where students weren't taking what we call the minimum load. We deal with those every year. So when this particular situation came up, it wasn't an abnormal or out of the ordinary situation because we have students who for years have, and I guess we'll say once we started having the ability to be able to take online classes, be able to go and take community college classes, all of that sort of changed the landscape. And so we recognize that, okay, as they're taking these extra courses or they're taking online courses and they're showing on the transcript and all of that, then it could be problematic, especially for seniors. So we've tried to make pointed suggestions, pointed reminders to our athletic directors that, seniors who want to play in the spring need to take the minimum load in the fall. So we've always talked about that, and like I said, when it arose in Onslow County, it really wasn't strange. It wasn't out of the ordinary because we've had those in the past.
Let me piggyback on that. You've got the two student athletes at Richlands and Southwest. How many other situations are there like that this spring across the state?
Well, we had several situations that had come to us in the form of hardships. I don't know what the exact number is, but once the state, that independent appeals board, changed its ruling, then we went back and pulled any hardship requests we had that were like those in Onslow County. We revisited those, and if those students had taken less than a minimum load and passed all of those courses, then we rendered them eligible immediately. So we recognized that we had some situations where students perhaps had applied for hardship but didn't appeal it. But we wanted to be fair because of that reversal of that ruling by the independent panel, independent appeals board. So then we went back and looked, and then we reached out. It probably was about 4 or 5 students we then deemed eligible based on that ruling.
Do you think that number's kind of gone up the last few years, last 5-10 years, because of the change in curriculum, the change in being able to take courses online, community college courses that maybe wasn't available 15-20 years ago?
I think that, yes, I think the number of students who are exercising the option, whether it is by way of being online classes or the community college classes, I think those numbers have risen. But I don't think the numbers that we've dealt with in the form of hardship has risen because we've tried to emphasize the importance of seniors take the minimum load. There is no senior exception, and so we have tried to put that information out there, and we've always said that it is the responsibility of parents, students, and the school to know our rules, and they haven't changed. In fact, I was looking at some old minutes and looking at some information that the minimum course load has been in place since 1976 by State Board of Education adoption.
That's what I want to get to next. You've got, obviously, the NCHSAA, you've got the State Board of Education, you've got this independent appeals committee, all working together to make sure student athletes are eligible and can play the sports. How difficult is that, those 3 entities working together to try to make this happen sometimes?
Well, it has never been difficult, even though there are those who think that it is difficult for the NCHSAA and the State Board of Education to work cooperatively together. We have done that for a long, long time. I've been here since '91, and there's never been a time that we have thought our eligibility rules operated independently of what the state board said. Now, we signed a memorandum of understanding, which obviously came about as a result of people believing that we didn't have any oversight. We've always had oversight. But it is not difficult for us to work with anybody. It's not difficult for us to follow the rules and regulations and the statute that is in place and has always been in place for us to look at those requirements. And what we've always done is anytime there was a concern about one of those eligibility rules, we would go to state board, or we would reach out and say, we need to take a look at this. And we had brought this to the attention of the Department of Public Instruction pre-COVID. But then, of course, COVID hit, and we weren't able to really do what we needed to do. I think we would have gotten to that, but obviously we're at a point now where I'm sure we'll be forced to do something.
So the State Board of Education, you're here to enforce the policies they put in place.
Absolutely, especially as it relates to the scholastic, our eligibility rules. How do you play athletics? Not the game rules, those kinds of things, but we have always said, what are the academic requirements that the State Board of Education then wants us to regulate? And we've always done that. We don't operate outside of that.
And the importance of these rules is to make sure that people, young people aren't just showing up playing sports, all the schoolwork doesn't matter.
That's correct. And we also, the importance of rules and regulations is that the schools that are at the coast and the schools that are at the far west mountains are all playing by the same set of rules, and that there is this group of people who come to work every day to try to make sure that they're all, following those rules and regulations.
You mentioned you've been in this office since 1991.
Mm-hmm.
How much has things changed? Obviously, the population is booming, growing every year.
Right.
More and more people are coming, which means more students in the schools. There's the talk one day expanding the classifications, maybe up to 7 different classifications. It's changed a lot over those years, hasn't it? Just what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, absolutely, it's changed. And obviously technology has changed, number one. And the ways in which we communicate with our schools. It used to be, when I came here, we were dependent on the U.S. mail to get everything to our member schools. And then the fax machine was invented, and so we were able to fax it to them a little quicker. The computer became much more popular. And of course now with the emails and the tweets and Instagram, all of those things have changed, and obviously it changes what we do. But it also means that we operate much more publicly than we used to operate. Now, with that being said, it weren't that we were doing anything wrong or that we were trying to do things in secret back when it was about the U.S. mail. It just means now that if you make a decision right now, that is known instantaneously around the world.
It's on Twitter.
That's
on
correct.
Blogs,
Right.
podcasts.
That's exactly right.
It's changed a lot. For you, as far as the eligibility situation that's happened, at least with our 2 student athletes in Onslow County, if you had a magic wand and you can make a change and you can just make this process maybe a little simpler for some of those students who really are trying as hard as they can to do as much as far as their academic career goes, what would you do?
Well, first of all, I really would take a look at trying to say either students need to pass a percentage of the courses they're taking, or perhaps we tie it directly to the credits that the state of North Carolina says that a senior must have in order to graduate from high school. I would look to do something along those lines. But I want to make it abundantly clear. This has nothing to do with the fact that students take AP courses or are in the IB program. I've seen a lot said that, well, these students were taking AP classes. That's not it. We don't get into what courses they're taking. We don't even look at the number of credits. Right now, if you ask me how many credits do Does a senior need to graduate? I can't tell you because I don't pay attention to that. But what is important is that the courses they're taking, that for us, it has meant they satisfy that minimum load. We look at things like, well, the course doesn't give a culminating grade until May or the end of the year. That's fine. That isn't held against a student. If a student is in a year-long course and we're looking to see, has that student passed the minimum load and the year-long course is factored in, what we say to ADs and principals, if you were giving a culminating grade in January or at the end of the semester, would that student pass? If the answer is yes, it counts towards the minimum load. So I want to be sure, because there's just been a lot of misinformation out there that suggested that, well, these students were taking AP courses or they were taking year-long courses when you don't even look at the grade until that time. That's not how this worked.
What advice would you have for student athletes when they start a brand new school year?
First of all, look at what the requirements are to be an athlete from one semester to the next. Because currently, what we have is that you must pass the minimum load. If you're on a traditional block and you take 4 90-minute blocks, that means that those courses are going to conclude within a semester. You must take 3 and pass 3 of the 4. So that even gives you an opportunity to be able to fail one. We want them to pass them all.
Don't want them to fail.
No, we don't want them to fail. But we also look at those hybrid situations where you're taking a course every other day. We call those the AB schedules. We have skinnies out there where in a 90-minute block, you have a 45-minute course, then it's backed up to another 45-minute course. So what I would say to student athletes, number one, know what the academic requirements are. Is it a minimum load? Just know that it's about being eligible semester to semester. You're eligible based on what you did the previous semester. I would tell student athletes also is to make sure that you're taking courses that prepare you to graduate so that when you graduate, you can do what it is you want to do. Playing athletics is wonderful. I was an athlete in high school, but it's a season. And so ultimately, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And that's important as well. I understand the importance of athletics. I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't think it was important. But I think it's also about perspective, and I want our young people to understand that as well.
A very small percentage of these student athletes will be professional athletes.
That's correct. And a very small percentage of our students will play even in college.
Right.
So it is so important that, one, our young people are having fun playing education-based athletics. The lessons we're trying to teach are lifelong lessons. It's about being the best citizen you can be. But if you happen to be in that small percentage, we think that's the gravy, and we want them also to be prepared to play at the next level, but to be a good citizen while they're in college and perhaps playing.